Originally airing Halloween 1978, this film was titled Stranger in Our House, which was aired on NBC. The film was later sold to CBS and retitled The Summer of Fear. This film stars a very poofy-haired Linda Blair, and even hair like that would put me in a bad mood. This film marks her third leading role in a horror film, the first two films being The Exorcist, which did gain her an Oscar nomination, and she later reprised her role in The Exorcist II: The Heretic. So this is her third leading role in a horror film. We also have a very young Fran Drescher, and this actually marks her television debut. So the film does open with somewhat of a point of view car chase scene. It's someone fleeing from something, and we have this very hectic atmospheric music playing, and the scene itself reminds me of the opening scene from Satan's School for Girls, where we have somebody also just fleeing in a hurry. Even the music is very similar. Honestly, when I first popped this in the DVD player, I thought I had rented the wrong movie. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but the openings are just extremely similar. This film is adapted from the book written by Lois Duncan, also titled Summer of Fear. In the book, the lead character, Rachel, has a dog named Trixie that she's very fond of. In the film version, the animal is actually changed to a horse. This change was supposedly made due to Linda Blair's fondness of horses. I honestly haven't read the book, but I think the change made for television actually made for more atmospheric situations, as the horse eventually does show fear against a certain person and sort of tries to attack this person. Also later, during somewhat of a horse show type scene, the animal also goes crazy, eventually breaks its leg, and is euthanized. So that is a very strong emotional scene. Obviously, Rachel is extremely upset. So the fleeing scene at the beginning, it leads into a car accident which leaves Rachel's cousin Julia somewhat of an orphan. So she does go to live with the family. It isn't long before she begins to usurp her life. It gradually begins at the timid, shy cousin. He makes friends with her friends. It isn't long before she steals Rachel's boyfriend and steals Rachel's friends. Eventually she pulls a poison ivy and also seduces Rachel's father, which I guess isn't so bad because Rachel is related to the mother, so technically not incest because she's not related to the dad, but still pretty gross. Rachel does just right from the beginning notice some very odd things about her cousin. Her accent is slightly off, and just sort of the way she carries herself is a bit creepy. Rachel eventually does discover some horsehair which was in a drawer that had been given to Julia to store her clothing. She also finds a picture of herself that had been slightly distorted, which a few days prior she had broken out into a bit of hives, so that sort of matches as well. She suspects her cousin of being a witch and eventually does confirm this with a family friend who lives across the street. He also conveniently happens to be a professor who gives her a handful of books to read over. Considering how everything lines up so far, it isn't long before the professor suffers an injury, winds up in the hospital. Rachel later does sneak into the hospital to speak to the professor, and he does confirm that yes, she is in fact a witch. In our ending sequence, Rachel's mother had gone on somewhat of a day trip to take some photos, and Rachel stays behind because she thought her cousin Julia was going to tag along. She eventually discovers that Julia stays behind and has sort of set up somewhat of a car crash event for her mother as well. So in order to go out and save her mother, Rachel does go out there and gets in somewhat of a car trouble herself. Rachel, along with her ex-boyfriend, go out to meet the mother, try to warn her what is going on, but they do happen to get in somewhat of a situation themselves. Julia is pursuing them. By this point, she's pretty much all witched out and demon-eyed and whatnot, and she's pretty much just pursuing them. She's in control of the vehicle and trying to push them over the side of a cliff. Events do occur which allow Rachel and her family to get away safely, and that is the last they ever hear of Julia. They eventually did discover that Julia was not actually their cousin, but rather a housekeeper who had killed the family and assumed an identity in order to better her life. So that's definitely a different spin on social climbing, but I don't know, I guess to each their own. I thought it was a very well told, very entertaining film, very extremely well directed, even if just a television film. It definitely does have a lot of talent in the film, not just considering Wes Craven, but you also do have Linda Blair as well. Acting style, I guess you could say, is somewhat dated. Rachel, or Linda Blair, does overact a bit, just comes off as extremely childish, but she is a privileged girl. Her family has always just been around her. She's never really been out in the cold, so I guess to some degree this would be understandable. But all in all, I thought it was a very great film. This film was quite hard to get a hold of up until 2003, when it finally did see a VHS and DVD release, which was made through Artisan Entertainment. At the time of the film's initial release, the film had only been a TV movie in the US, whereas in Europe it did receive a limited theatrical release and was released under the title Summer of Fear. But that is all I have for you today. I will talk to you later.